So I was thumbing through uh, social media. I Googled Tammy Wynette, and the first thing that popped up, and I hadn't seen it. I had never seen it before. It was really cool. Was the 1991 induction to the Living Legend, and
I
that was
love that
cool.
so much. Yeah.
That was really cool.
Sometimes I'll come across that. Somebody's posted it
Hmm.
or tagged me, something. And I love watching that because Mom truly was surprised by that.
And
It
she was
really,
going,
she was
okay.
just, couldn't
Yeah,
believe it was happening.
right.
And I think because she just felt like it was all over for her. She was at that point in her career where she was enjoying seeing her friends and everybody doing well and going to the shows and stuff. But she knew that she wasn't being pushed as an artist anymore. She
Yep.
maintained she still had her record deal,
Oh
but
yeah.
there comes a point where they stop spending that money on you because they think that other people are,
Yep. We're gonna
you know,
get it back larger here.
yeah,
We'll keep you over here as a slow cash cow,
just in
but
case.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
just in case.
don't want to lose all the milk.
That's it. That's it. Yeah, I got to meet and know your mom on a personal level, as far as we used to maintain their property there when she
Yeah,
and she was always so sweet and kind. She would, if I'd come over with the guys or something, just to make sure that they were doing things exactly right.
yeah,
Especially if I had somebody that was not used to going to her house, I tried to keep the same people.
yeah.
And but every time she would see me, she would bring me out a sandwich.
I'm not surprised. Mom's love language is doing things
Food.
to her. Like she loved food.
Yeah,
She took food to the dentist. She'd take it to the eye doctor.
yeah,
Wherever she went,
yeah.
usually a banana pudding or something would follow.
Oh,
So
she knew that I liked turkey and cheese with mustard on white bread. And
that's my
buddy,
kind of sandwich.
she brought me one, the only one I can compare. And I was laughing about it because I was trying to prepare myself to talk to you the other day. The only one I can compare, I don't know if you've ever had one. There's a Carter's Creek Pike. There's a store called Huff's.
Oh, I've heard of Huff's.
They put about that much turkey,
Yeah.
two slices of cheese about that thick on top and the bottom, and a big chunk of Texas white bread,
Yep.
and then slice it across. When you finish one half of it, you're like, yeah, that's gonna be dinner for tonight.
Yeah.
You just roll it up in the wax paper, put the toothpick back in it.
Yeah. And I think that's the reason why I messed up when I eat anything away from home anymore. Because Mom would always hefty everything. Everything was a big, we grew, Southern cooking.
Oh, I
We
used to
overdo
just
the lard and the salt and the everything. So you got to have the portions bigger than life, too.
I used
so.
to just when I would go into her kitchen. I was like, you could just cook. Look at this big center island, and look at this big long bar. Man, you could cook for 100 people in this kitchen.
And she would. She loved it. She
It
would
was
tell you
amazing.
she doesn't
Two
know how to
ovens,
cook for
two
two.
refrigerators. I mean, it was
Yep.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I just, I couldn't imagine. I'd be big as a barrel.
One of my favorite stories about Mom with cooking like that, she actually was in England one year. And normally, Thanksgiving and like the whole month of December, Mom would be off. Worst case scenario, she might have to work through part of the week Thanksgiving, but she'd always take December off to be with family, spend more time with us leading up to the holiday. And but this was the first time she ever had to spend Thanksgiving, I guess, with the full band, and they're far, far away from home. In fact, they're overseas, which if you don't, we tend to forget sometimes they don't do Thanksgiving
All right.
for obvious reasons. So she started trying to ask the people at the hotel if they would mind if her and some of the backup singers, if they could make a meal for the band special for our holiday. And so they kind of just gave over the kitchen to Mom and let her do her thing. And the funniest thing is, she'd been trying for a couple of days leading up to it to find cornmeal for cornbread dressing, chicken
Gotcha.
and dressing. And couldn't find, can't find cornmeal in England. And so she actually had one of our friends, Martha, who passed away last year, but she asked Martha if she would please come hang out with her for a week in England. She'd buy her a ticket. And by the way, could you put a 5-pound bag of
Cornmeal in your luggage.
cornmeal in your luggage?
I
So
love
she
it.
did. And they cooked for everybody. And Mom had the staff eating with them and everything. So it was awesome.
She was getting ready to leave one day, and I was laughing. I said, as much as you cook, and I said, I can't believe you've got that big, she had a big bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken. And I said, I thought y'all were leaving, going to be gone for about a month or so. She said, oh, honey, we are. We're going overseas. And I said, well, you just eating the chicken so you don't have the craving while you're overseas? She goes, no, you know what? She said, it's consistent around the world. Kentucky Fried Chicken. She said, that's
Yep.
the one thing that's consistent around the world. I said, all right. And I've never forgotten that. I was like, I don't know if I believed it. I don't know if she was picking on me or what, but I thought, damn, Kentucky Fried Chicken's consistent around the world. But I ain't ever been out of the United States, so I don't know.
Well, I can tell you, I don't. My husband's from England, and when we go over there, KFC is definitely a staple, and it tastes like home. Now, McDonald's and all those other things, they're there, but they have different recipes for stuff. They end up catering to
Well, yeah.
whatever the flavors are in that area.
Well, and then, getting into the world news today, a lot of those countries do not allow certain things, certain dyes,
Yeah.
certain chemicals, certain oils,
Oh, a bunch.
because they
Yeah.
understand what it does. And I was looking at a program the other day, and they were talking about life expectancy, and they were talking about Europe and Scotland and England and all that. These people are living in their 90s, well into their
Oh, yeah.
90s, and ours is between 75 and 84.
Yeah, that tells you something. You know?
And they were saying, a lot of it to do is what we ingest.
Yep. Because I had a really great friend when I was a nurse that was a nutritionist, and she explained something to me that I thought was great because I'd never really heard it explained quite that way. And she was talking about a lot of times people don't really understand how important nutrition is as far as things not being chemically altered.
Mm-hmm.
That your body knows how to take care of foods that are natural. That's part of our ecosystem.
That's right.
It's a natural, ordinary thing to do. But when you start confusing it with chemicals and things it's never had in it or it doesn't know what to do with, it stores things like that as fat because it doesn't really know how to process, metabolize, and get rid of it. So that makes a lot of sense. And then when it stays there, those chemicals can't be good just hanging on for decades.
And that I get this all the time. It's like I'll have we'll go back to the turkey and cheese sandwich.
Yeah.
I'll have a turkey cheese sandwich. 9 times in it, if they don't have mustard, I'll just eat it plain. How can you eat that? Well, do you not like turkey and cheese? That's what you're making.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, they'll put a ton of dressing, or they'll have, mayonnaise and a tomato and all this.
Yeah.
I said, well, which part of that do you enjoy the most? All of it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. Well, you don't even know what a turkey and cheese sandwich tastes like, do you?
No, and that's the truth. Most stuff has so much extra.
Yes. I said,
Yeah.
when we grill at home, my wife gets frustrated because she likes, certain things on this and certain things on that. I said, I like it for what it is. If I go to a restaurant somewhere and they say, well, how would you like that cooked plain? No seasoning, please.
Yeah. Well, and I always get sauces on the side because what if they don't make it the way I like it and then it doesn't taste good and now
Exactly.
I've got everything drowned in it.
Yeah, and then you got to give it something to help it slide down.
Yeah. Exactly.
But my dad always told me one time, he was a big steak eater, and he always said if you order a filet and they ask you if you want A1, change your mind and get chicken instead. Would you like A1? Matter of fact, no, just give me chicken.
Yeah.
If your
That's
steak is like
hilarious.
that, it's that bad.
See, and then there's people like Mom who wasn't big on a lot of meat anyway. She just raised on a farm. We don't have to go there. She didn't. All of that kind of bother her. So if she did eat meat, especially steak, like it had to be cremated. It had to be absolutely so well done. I didn't know that there was another way to eat
Oh my gosh.
beef until I was in my 20s, and then I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, but Mom, she would tell them, especially if we went to a fancy restaurant, they automatically think, oh, well, you're, medium rare or what is, however we do this particular thing. She's like, no. And she'd say, please, honestly, if you're concerned and you think there might be even the slightest bit of pink in that meat, she said, I'd rather you come back with char on it. Don't bring it out if it's possibly pink. I'll have to send it back because I don't want any of that in there. So they're like, they'd always give her the worst looks. And then she'd make it worse because she'd go, and can you bring some ketchup?
Oh, what you like.
That's what she liked. So burnt steak with ketchup. That was Mom's way to eat beef.
I got to tell this story. So 2 years ago, Daryl Worley and I were in Ohio doing a fair festival thing up there. We were all in the green room eating. And, they had everything to eat. Well, this guy that was preparing everything, he had this big bowl of salad, and he had been there just, flipping it and flopping it and cutting tomatoes, and he'd stick them in there, this, that, and the other. And we, I don't eat salad like that because, one, I'm allergic to tomatoes. I don't like
goodness.
onions. And so if I fix a salad, it's more like a fruit salad with lettuce.
Yeah.
And so I forgot what I got. I got something that was maybe grilled chicken and something, simple, and this, that, and the other, so I'm eating it. Well, all these young ladies come in, and these girls are, big girls. They're corn-fed type girls that used to working out in the field. They were great women. We had a ball laughing and cutting up with them. But they were big. Every one of them was 6 foot or better.
Yeah.
I felt like, wow. So this is how they grow them up here. And it was funny. They all got a salad, about that big around. Well, they got the salad and went down. I said, well, man, they're eating healthy. I said, they're not fat. They're just big girls,
Mm-hmm.
And so Daryl and I were kind of looking at each other, and they went down the line, and all of a sudden, they poured enough ranch dressing on that.
To make it soup.
I looked at Daryl. He said, "Could have went to Burger King," and
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah, I could have had a Happy Meal for that.
Yeah.
Same amount,
Yeah.
no matter what." And that's people drown their food.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and then, I know, as I had a lot of friends that, I've only recently, since, I've gotten older, I've started having to struggle with worrying about my weight and all of that kind of stuff. So that's a whole thing for me. But I was very blessed for many years not to have to worry about it. And I ate what I wanted to eat. But I had friends who would all the time be upset because they're like, man, I don't eat anything but salads. And I don't eat, I eat this and I eat that. And I don't know why. And then when you see what their salads are, that's the thing. I think we've turned salads really weren't meant to have tons of bacon and cheese and croutons and dressings and things that have a lot of fat and extra calories in it. It was supposed to be the healthier vegetables in the garden, but, it's a salad, though.
Yeah, it's a salad.
So it
makes you feel better.
That's it.
So what has been going on in your world musically?
Wow, okay. So we moved to Alabama
Right.
from, Spring Hill about 2.5 years, almost 3 years ago. And we really just wanted to change and kind of I still wanted to do music. I love music. I enjoy that. But, we just wanted to get away from everything up here in Nashville, just because we felt like we needed to have more peace of mind on our own, away from the city and away from the business and all of that. And it's really been the best thing in the world for us. We've enjoyed it so much. We still do studio work from home, which has been awesome. My husband, thank goodness, he knows how to do all that. That's certainly not me. I show up and get in front of a microphone, and that's all I do. So he does the hard work. But we've been doing that, and then I still tour and go wherever they want me. If they'll take me, I'll go to sing. And I do some of my own music, but I mostly get a lot of requests for mom and dad's music. And to be honest, 20-year-old me would have been annoyed by that. 20-year-old me would have been like, it's all about me.
Yeah.
How come they don't want to hear my music? And and I would have been like, I've got to forge my own way and all of that kind of stuff. And I think mature 54-year-old me realizes, number one, I want to honor my parents. I'm very proud of them, and I don't want people to forget their music or who they are. So I get to incorporate stories and personal things and notes in my show that kind of talk about who they were as people, which is important to me. And then I still get to share some of my own music here and there when I can. And I get to do all of that, doing something I love to do, traveling with people I love to travel with, and honoring them and being able to do something that actually even pays my bills. So, plus. So I'm good with that. So all that ego stuff, way decades in the past, and I'm glad it's there, because that's not what life is all about, and not why we're here. And now I'm enjoying our little zoo at home, our millions of dogs and cats, and our garden, and our just our kind of being out in the middle of nowhere. And we have found a new church there that we love, with some great people, and just growing in every way that matters. And that's been awesome for us.
And imagine that, all with a man that you tried to give away.
I know, right?
I never will forget that story. I was asking, how did y'all meet? Well, actually, I was trying
Isn't
to
that
give him away to
hilarious?
somebody else, and it didn't work. Felt sad, took him in.
I know, right? Okay, so
Tripped and fell right in love with him. Who knew?
Isn't that hilarious? I think I used to joke about how the reason why I think most relationships kind of are doomed in the very beginning is because we send our ambassadors out instead of our real selves.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
we kind of send that person out that we want to impress that person and be nice and like look the certain way and blah and all of that stuff. And that never is good. Just being yourself is the best way to be because eventually they're going to get to know you.
Yeah. My
And,
wife always says when you're dating them, you're seeing the best of them.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
So my point in saying that is that I think both of us had just gotten out of really not great relationships is one way to put it, you know, several months earlier. And so both of us were on a, like, I don't really care to, nor do I really have a desire to date at all. I just not into that right now. And I wasn't looking for a boyfriend or a husband. I was on tour actually. And I was in Ireland and we had a house band that was backing Leona Williams, Hal Ketchum, Doug Stone, and myself, and some other Irish artists that we met and worked with over there for a couple of weeks. And it was hilarious because when we started talking at first, and like he was talking about how he was going to get his work visa. He was in the process of going through all that to be able to be a steel player in Nashville, and he was looking forward to moving in the next 6 months to a year. And I started trying to compile a list of people and places and things where he needed to go. And, you know, I was trying real hard to help him out and network
Playing
him.
mama. Playing mama.
Yeah. And then it was hilarious because after a friend of ours realized we both must like each other, which was another one of those crazy things. We were at a sound check, and Philomena Begley, who is pretty much Ireland's queen of country music there. She's had an amazing 50-year career there. And when we met her, she was one of the artists with us, and we were sitting at sound check, and she, I guess, saw me looking at him. And she goes, "Oh, you like the wee steel player?" And I was like, "Oh, he's pretty cute, not hard to look at, you know." And she's like, "Well, why don't you say something to him and y'all, you know, go out to dinner?" I said, "Are you kidding? I'm like, I'm in a foreign country. I don't know him. He doesn't know me. We've had some conversations, but where's that going to go? And now I'm good. Like, it's all right." And so apparently I didn't know till later, but she had said something to Jamie and said, "You know, I think Georgette might like you. Don't you want to say?" He's like, "Oh, no, I couldn't. Like, she's an artist I'm working with." And, like, you know, he just was trying to play that off. So after our show that very night, I guess she decided to play matchmaker. And it kind of terrified me because I didn't know what she was about to say or do. We had just done our show and we're walking out of this ballroom in this place that we worked, and all the band and everybody were going to head down to the bar and have some after show food and a few drinks. And so she's walking there. She grabs my arm, grabs his arm, puts our hands together as she's walking us to the lobby.
Gotcha.
And I'm starting to panic now. Like, what is she about to say or do?
Where is she leading us?
Oh my goodness, this is going to be bad. And she's like, "You like him. He likes you. Let's bond." And then she walks away. And I just kind of looked up at him, and he's like, "Do you want to go have a drink?" And I was like, "Okay." And we ended up having dinner. And like in the next 2 weeks, I was sobbing, not wanting to leave. And there you go.
Right.
You know, that was 2009. And so many years later, here we are.
There you go. Yeah, perfect. You were talking about a while ago, and when you after you turned 50, a lot of things changed for you, the way you think. You know, she had been around, so she knew. Okay,
Oh yeah.
look, why are
She's
y'all
like, "They're never
why
gonna
are
do
y'all
this."
acting this
Yeah,
way? Here you go.
exactly. She was like,
Cling,
"I got to
you
do
know.
something about this."
Yeah. So did you invite her to the wedding?
I did, and she came.
There
And it's
you go.
hilarious because we joked about it. Both of us said, "Just so you know, we're grateful for you right now, but if anything ever happens down the road,
yeah, you're in the
we're
can,
coming
lady."
after you, both of us."
Yeah, you're in the can, lady. That's awesome. That's awesome.
And we have to thank Bruce Boughton too, because technically he was supposed to be the steel player for that gig, but
And
he was working for Reba at the time, and she added more dates, and he ended up having to cancel only about 3 days
Well, don't you love
before the
that?
tour was going to start. And Jamie got the call, so he had like 80 songs to learn in 3 days. And so
That's still, it's just crying.
yeah, he's like, "I just focused on intros, outros, and any
That's it.
classic had to be, you know, licks."
That's
So
it. That's it. That's it.
yeah, So thank you, Bruce.
There
Thank
you
you,
go.
Philomena. Thank you, Reba, for adding dates.
There you
Appreciate
go.
it.
Reba has dates still.
I know, right?
Reba. What's her last name?
Reba, Shmeba. I don't
What's
know.
her last name again?
I think she's been sort of successful.
Yeah, sorta.
A little bit.
She got into that acting thing. I love watching her shows.
I do too.
She is a natural at it.
She is. In fact, I watched all the Reba series when it came out, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing what I do as an old person. I'm saying that because like I've decided it's officially an old person thing that I do. I don't like all the stuff that I see on TV anymore, so I just go find an old show I used to like, and it's been enough
Start it
years
over.
have passed. I just start over and re-binge watch it, and
That's
then I'm
what we do.
happy. And so I'm right now in season 6 of the 6 seasons of Reba. So
Yeah, my mom called me the other day, and there was a altercation that was on the news. And she called me and she said, "Are you watching the news?" I'm like, "No." "Are you watching TV?" And I was like, "Yeah." well, the news is on. I was like, "Yeah, well, but this is when Andy Griffith comes on." You know,
oh my goodness, you're part dad, aren't you? You're part my dad.
Andy Griffith, man, all day long. I watch Andy in the morning, Andy in the evening.
Oh,
then
see, Andy at supper time. Then you have to go on.
That's right. 2.5 Men comes on after that.
Yep.
It's everybody loves Raymond.
Yes.
I like watching wholesome, funny,
Yeah.
real life stuff.
Me too.
Some of this stuff is so foreign to me that's on
Yeah.
TV now. It's like,
Well,
yeah, okay.
And I think they try to make certain things like whatever's happening in the world today to
Yeah.
teach you a lesson. Okay, I don't want any lessons. I'll learn whatever I need to learn at this point in my life. But the whole thing is this is entertainment. I want to be entertained. I
Exactly.
watch the news and I want to slit my wrists.
Yes.
That's just depressing and
Yes.
horrible to watch everything falling apart around us in this world.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I look to those things for, oh, this makes me feel good because this is happy and lighthearted and, I can giggle and be
Yeah.
silly.
Your dad though, every time we were around him, me and Jerry we'd meet up with him somewhere and we'd go to lunch or something, and him and Jerry had this thing to where they picked each other like a scab.
Yeah.
They were always trying to get one up on each other, and I
Yeah.
just sit back and would watch. And it was like a ping pong match. Well, you gonna say
Yeah.
now? Okay, I got you. What are you gonna say now?
Yep.
And your dad, I don't know if I've told you this or not. When you remember when your dad first got the big Hummer?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he thought that thing was a Sherman tank. And so he comes over and picks us up in it at Jerry's house, and we're going to the what do they call it? I can't remember what the place is called. We called it the Green Fly because we went in there 2 or 3 times, and you know what a green fly is? It's
Oh,
a
yeah.
meat-eating fly.
Yeah.
And this green fly kept landing on the table, and Jerry goes, "That ain't good." He said, "We're going to name that City Cafe." That's what it was.
Oh, my goodness.
And he says, "You want to go to the Green Fly?" That's where we went. So Jerry Reed and all of them, we would all be there, sitting with over a little corner table and everything. And so we're driving down the road, and I sit in the little back seat, and your dad said, "Well, what do you think about my Hummer?" And Jerry said, "Why do they call it a Hummer?" And he said, "I don't rightly know." He said, "Now I was going to get one of them that come right from the Army, but I didn't like it. I didn't like it." He said, "Well, are you expecting something to happen really bad, George?" And he said, No. But he said, "This thing's amazing." He said, "It can climb that wall right there if you wanted it to." And he said, "Well, let me out before you try that." And they were just picking at each other. And he said, "I'm just saying it's an all-around truck. It's an amazing vehicle." And Jerry said, I get what you're saying." He said, "You can haul drywall in it if you wanted to." And he said, "Oh, you're thinking of going in the drywall business, are you?" And I mean, I was just,
That's
I was sitting in the
hilarious.
back, and they were picking at each other. "Well, let's go eat, smart ass."
Yes.
And I remember the very last day I saw your dad. We both had the same asthma doctor,
Oh, okay, yeah.
and Dr. Bellow's office over here in Cool Springs.
Yeah.
And I was sitting down waiting to go get my allergy shots, and he was sitting right next to me. He came in and sit down. I got up and went to the bathroom. And I had my stuff laying in the seat, and when I come back to sit down, he was sitting next to me. And I was asking, I said, "You not doing well?" "No, son." He said, "Can't catch my breath." He said, it's hot out there." And I said, "Well, it means you need to stay inside." He said, "Well, it doesn't matter. Can't catch my breath either way."
No.
And so about a week later, or two maybe, I was over at the entrance of the auto mall, and it just blew his mind that they were selling Nissans, Maseratis, and Rolls Royce all at the same dealership.
Yeah.
He pulled over and he rolled down the window. He said, "What you doing over here, son?" I said, "Oh, just doing a little work." And he said, I can't believe this. He said, "You got Nissan, you got Mazda, you got Rolls Royce, you got Lamborghini." I said, "What? Had they just putting them all in a pile now? You just pick?" And I said, "Yeah, go in there and pick you one out." He said, "I'm good."
I can't believe he even said I'm good.
No, he
'cause
said, "I'm good." He loved that little what was that? The Ford station wagon looking car.
Oh yeah.
He said
No,
he
wait a
bought
minute.
three
Flex,
of them.
Ford Flex.
He said he'd bought three of them. I
Yes.
said, "Well, how do you can't drive them all at once?" "No, I got one for certain days and certain things." I said, "Okay,
Yeah.
all right."
He did.
He did.
Loved that
He said,
car.
"I'd soon drive this car as any of them."
Dad loved cars,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you know how he was, and he had a DeLorean at one time, and he didn't have it long enough. I didn't ever even get to see it, and I remember him talking about it.
He
and
was
I'm
in
like,
Heathrow then.
yeah, okay,
Yeah,
because I told
I
him, I
remember it.
said, "What in the world? You only had it for a couple of weeks. Like, why'd you get it if you were not gonna keep it?" And he said, "Oh Lord," he said, "you had to clean that thing with Windex." And he said, "I'm serious." He said, "If you touched it, I mean, it's like
Fingerprints.
your refrigerator or anything else chrome." He said,
Yep.
"And you know me, I wash my car almost every day." He said, "And if I can't keep it clean," he said, "I couldn't stand to look at it because it just looked like it had fingerprints and dirt all over it all the time." He said,
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't for me.
And poor Pee Wee, he just out there with a wash bucket,
Yeah.
wash rag.
Yeah, trying to clean it, and yep,
This ain't working.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. He's. I did a lot of things for your dad. We right down from planting shrubbery to sitting around listening to singing and singing. And I had one day it was amazing. We were sitting in his basement down there at Heathrow, and trying to remember all the artists that were there. It was Waylon Jennings. Merle Haggard, George, and I'm drawing a blank. What's the one guy I do all of his stuff? We just did some videos on him. The Voice, Vern Gosdin.
Oh, okay.
Vern Gosdin.
Yeah.
They're all sitting down there playing music. I'm sitting like a kid in a candy store. There's all of my heroes in one spot.
That's
It's
awesome.
amazing. And they were cutting at each other and digging at each other, and I was like, "What are y'all doing? Are you gonna write music? What are you gonna do?" I just sit over because I figured if I spoke up, they'd make me leave.
Yeah.
But I was there. I was brought there to bury a poodle,
Oh my goodness.
a dog.
Star.
They had
Yeah.
we buried it on the back hill. I dug the grave for it. Me and a couple of guys got up there on the back of that hill and dug that grave. They had a little mini dog
Yep.
casket, and I think they had flowers. It was the wrong time of year for flowers. They had flowers flown in,
Oh,
and
yeah.
bulbs flown in, and all this mess for the thing. And then when they moved, guess who got to dig it up?
You had to move Star to Sounds about right.
Jim, do you remember where we buried our dog at? I said, "Yeah. Can you go forget that for me?"
Oh my goodness.
There won't ever be another like it.
Did people mind you going to dig in their backyard to go get Star?
I guess it was arranged.
Oh, okay.
I have no
was
idea.
Because I'm like,
We pulled up on the left side and walked up the side, it was buried in that left-hand rear corner back there. And we just dug it up and took it over.
yeah.
And, he had a little bit tombstone and everything for it. So we brought it all. Yeah. But you were talking about earlier, now you like doing your mom and dad's music and carrying on so their music is not forgotten. I don't
Yeah.
think you got a thing to worry about.
Well, you're sweet, and
I
I
mean,
appreciate that.
you're-
I see how country music has just changed so much. I guess
It's changed, but 2 years ago I was in the studio over at BMG, and the engineer over there was playing me some stuff. He said, dude, he said, you keep doing what you're doing, it's going to come back. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I've been hearing this crap for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I keep hoping and praying. He said, well, listen to this guy I just cut. And I'm like, who is it? And he said, a guy named Zach Top.
Oh, yes. I love him.
And I was like,
you don't
Zach
know
Top.
me, Zach, but if you see this podcast, I love you and would love to do a duet. I'm just
Just
going to
saying.
leave that right there.
Just saying. Don't forget me.
And go on.
I can sing real low. But
I'm ready to go on tour
he
with
started playing Zach Top, and I'm going like,
Yeah, he's
oh
amazing.
my God. I said, this is what we've been needing.
Yes.
And then, a week before I was in there, and I got to meet Lainey Wilson. I was like,
yes.
this is what we've been needing.
Yes.
Okay, let's get these two together. And so when I went back over to listen to some of the final stuff and everything, I asked him, I said, how's Zach doing? I said, no, he said, oh, he's got this one on the radio, and it landed here, and it landed here, and it landed here. And I was like, good, good, good. Next thing I know, we were talking, and I said, how is Zach doing? He said, oh, he's opening up a bunch of shows with Lainey. I said, okay, good, good, good. So all of these people, I spent a year telling about Zach Top. Some of these promoters, I was like, if you get a chance, go ahead and get him now.
Yeah.
Because you won't be able to afford him long.
Well, and see, I have a dream that my husband, I told him I had this wonderful idea, but you need money for dreams, just saying. So I'm going to give that dream to anybody out there who's got a bank account way bigger than mine. But the whole thing is, especially now that he's really doing so well, I would love to see a combination of some of the 90s girls and guys with him and a couple other like him, like Jake Worthington, like some of the newer I call real country folk, you know what I mean? Like the actual country people, and put them with the trying to think right now, Alan Jackson's not doing much anymore, but
he's done. He's I think he's winding his tour up now.
Yeah, so like Chestnut and so many
Lawrence,
others.
Tracy Lawrence,
and Aaron Tippin and Sammy Kershaw and David Worley and Lori Morgan, Pam Tillis, Patty Loveless, some of the 90s folks. Paired with him, I think a lot of people who are digging him right now, who are so young, they really hadn't realized the 90s happened before they were born. There's a huge, big thing of great country music out there that I wish.
We did an interview with Colin Ray the other day, and we were talking the same thing. You know, it's like, man, we got to start dragging some of these youngers out.
He is amazing as well.
Oh my God,
yeah,
he's
so
just
great.
If you sit down and dissected his career, and you could almost put any other artist in that era up to him that was broke. There's no comparisons. I mean, tons of number ones, tons of top tens, this, that, and other. And he's just, he like one of the things he said, I've been so fortunate my entire life to do the one thing I love, and that's sing and entertain. Yeah. And he said, and he said, I'm going to do it right up probably to the day I don't. Yeah. And he said, it's paid the bills, and, that's amazing. And I said, well, if it's, if it's paying the bills and you can do it, do it. Yep. So, yep, definitely. A lot of us can't.
I know.
It's not that we're not as talented. No. It's just that, you got to have that edge. And there's a lot of
timing
and the edge. You got to have the edge. And everybody said, "Oh, it's all in the song." I've had some great songs.
Oh yeah, there's been some great ones. There's some stuff on even Mom and Dad stuff that no one's ever heard that I like far better than some of their other bigger hits. Yeah, that no one even knows what it is because it was never put out as a single. And back, especially in those days, you didn't hear a lot of those. "Stand by Your Man" happens to be an odd example of that. It wasn't really, Mom didn't ever think she'd ever have to sing that past the studio session because that wasn't a planned single, and it turned out getting played more in England and in Europe and became a number one hit there, and so it ended up being a single then, and like it was a big deal in 1969. But for her, I mean, I like to tell people that story in my shows about 1969. It wasn't like today. Like my husband's in Alabama, we could pull this thing up and we could communicate and make whatever music we need to. We could do that with someone in Norway. Like it doesn't matter. You can do it all over the world through the internet. But back then everybody had to be there at the same time. You had to make that magic all at the exact same time and make it just right. And You did all your sessions all at one time, and so they had to write one more song. They needed one more song for the session, and Billy Sherrill pulled Mom to the piano, and they sat down, and in less than 20 minutes wrote what would be her signature hit for the rest of her life. And she was telling him that she thought the high note at the end it made her scream. It just sounded awful. She thought it was awful, like, I'm screeching. And he's like, no, trust me, you got to have a big finish. That's what you need. And she's like, well, I won't ever have to sing this again after a day anyway. So she said, I very happily was wrong about that and had to sing it every night, of course. But
Billy Sherrill is buried right next to Jerry.
Yes.
And Jerry told me a story one time. He said, I am so fortunate when I got into the industry. And it's kind of like that edge. He was there right at the right time.
Yeah.
And he walked away from a record deal because he really wasn't sure that's what he wanted to do. He said, I feel more at home writing, and then everybody kind of laughed at him, like, you walked away from United, and he's like, yeah. But a year later, and, a lot of us have been writing songs for a long time and have never had a hit. A year later, his first #1 hit, Dime at a Time.
Yeah.
And he said, and after that, he said, once you've proven yourself, he said, you not only prove it to other people, but you kind of almost prove something to yourself. You become more confident in your words and your thoughts. And he said, I had a few hits in between there. And he said, I was writing Good Year for the Roses. And he said, I would write a line one morning and that's all I'd have, He said, well, I can get up and go get on the tractor.
Yeah.
So he'd get on the tractor and he'd be bush hogging or disking or whatever. And he said, then I'd get a line. And I'd go, oh, crap, I got to go write it down before I forget it.
Yep.
So he'd run in the house and he'd write a line down, and he'd sit there for a while and just kind of, and he said, I found myself pushing myself. And he said, a lot of good songs are ruined by trying to make a deadline or being pushed, and for a certain thing. And he said, it just came along. He said, but in the midst of writing A Good Year for the Roses, he said, these other lines would pop into my head. And he said, I don't know where they were coming from. And he said, I'd write them down on a separate sheet of paper over here, because it had nothing to do with this song. And when he got Good Year for the Roses done, he said, I sat there and I played the whole thing all the way through and had this little cassette recorder, going so he could take it into town with him. And he looked over at that other one and he said, I just started reading the words. And he said, I'd strum every once in a while. And he said, I recorded it just like that. And he said, I took them both to town and to my office. And George was looking for some songs. And I said, well, George, I just finished this one. I really think it fits you to a T. You might want to come over and listen to it. So it was Good Year for the Roses.
Yeah, what a great song. Oh, my
and
goodness.
he said, if you got anything else, I'm looking for something for Tammy. And he said, well, I wrote this other thing the same time. And he said, it makes all the sense in the world. He said, but I don't know where it come from. He said, I think God wrote this song.
That's awesome.
And he said, what are you talking about, Chestnut? And he said, I think God wrote this song. He just used my hand and my pen. And he said, I'll go ahead and play it for you. So he played it for him, sit there and played it. He said, oh, Tammy will make a hit out of that. He said, yeah, I think so. So Good Year for the Roses stayed in, I think he said 9 weeks or better at #1. And The Wonders You Perform come up and knocked it out of #1 spot. So Good Year for the Roses was in the #2 spot for 6 more weeks. And The Wonders You Perform was sitting at #1. He said, I had #1 and #2.
Wow.
Ta-da.
You know what's so crazy? I was actually just thinking about that song this morning because Mom, she got her start in music with gospel music and her community and working in a gospel quartet and playing accordion and singing gospel music in church. And so those kind of songs meant a lot to her. And that song in particular is one of my sisters and I, one of our favorites. You'll Never Walk Alone and The Wonders You'll Perform and several others that Mom did back. Precious Memories. It's a big song to our family. And so certain songs like that are really special. And so when I had that conversation this morning, I hadn't talked about that song in ages. So it's so funny that you bring that up right here and now because that's awesome.
we discussed before Jerry passed. He said, son, you need to cut that song. And I was like, all right. And I've attempted to just sit down, and it's a hard song.
Yeah.
And sit down and do it. And I've accomplished it a couple of times, but I've never had enough confidence to say, okay, I'm going to cut this song.
Yeah.
And the reason why is for fear of having to sing it.
Yeah.
Because I know it's a hit. I'll have to sing that thing night in and night in. Wherever I go, I've got to sing it.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. But
you want to do it equally as well every time. And
exactly.
You leave the comfort of a studio and you have to be live.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, Pat will tell you, we're all natural in the studio. I don't tune. I don't do nothing. If I have to do a line 10 times, I'm going to do it. I don't like this auto this, that, and auto that. And
well, it's steroids for the Olympics. That's what I look at.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it's just such a different song. But any time that someone passes, especially when they're young, I'll take that song and I'll email it to them.
Oh.
And they don't call me immediately, and I don't do it right off the bat. But, because I know they're going to have a difficult time.
Yeah.
And if you listen to the words of that song, it'll make you at ease a little bit,
Yeah.
And because one of the lines in, you brought this child into the world only for a little time. And I guess you saw that he was so special that you wanted him back for your own.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how did you come up with that? Several conversations about that song. And he said, I didn't. He said, I promise you. He said, I don't remember literally writing half of those lines. And he said, it would just come to me, and I'd go, where in the world is this coming from? And he said, I told Pat when I finished it, he said, God wrote that song. I just held the pen.
Well, so that's going to make me have to try to do that in the studio. Because to be honest, what's really hilarious about us having this conversation is, especially over the last several years, because of how things have changed so much in country music, I got frustrated and stopped really listening to the radio. I did. And so I discover people mainly because I have friends who are nice enough to call me and go, oh, this new person, got to hear them. And then, then I go listen. But I've gotten to where I listen to contemporary Christian music all the time. And because it's always uplifting, always makes me feel good. And it kind of keeps me grounded in a place where I feel like I need to be, so that I don't, let the world around me make me feel suffocated and anxious and worried about stuff. I know that sounds crazy to some people, but for me, I've found a really nice spot there. And I've never been in that world. I don't know anything about that world. I just know that I love that music, and I've only recently started trying to sing and do some of it, other than just singing in church. And so my husband and I are going to do a very broken down version of some songs and things that have always meant something to me, inspiration wise. And that's always been one that I'd considered, but like you said, it's like
it's tough.
I don't know if I can sing that one well enough to, so I'm going to have to.
Yeah, I did it. I actually have a version of it that I did. I've just kind of been sitting on it. But it was just a guitar and a fiddle.
That's awesome. See, and that's my vision for like this project that I want to do is I don't want, even in Christian music especially, it's just the day and time, I think. We're so computer and digital and all that. I think we've gotten to a point where everything is just so much. We want to try to put every instrument alive on it, and then everything is just so that. And I don't want that. I want it to feel like you're very organically sitting somewhere or at a church where you would hear something that you just would hear and immediately be like, I don't need to hear 100 instruments. You know what I mean? I don't need everything known to man.
Don't need a symphony.
Yeah, because that is the symphony. Just the words and the the music hopefully will inspire people. So I'm thinking, guitar, maybe some piano here or there, depending, maybe only one of each. And, my husband plays steel, so I'm going to totally use him and abuse him in the studio and get some of that.
Efficient.
That's it. That's it. So, but yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that. That's one of the things I've been excited about here lately.
What was one of the most memorable holidays that you and your mom and dad had together?
Oh my goodness. I was only 4 when they divorced.
Yeah.
So holidays after that weren't very, like, together, all of us. Didn't really happen,
Okay.
unfortunately. It was here and then there,
Gotcha.
when things happen. And I didn't get to see, a lot of those holidays with my dad until I was a bit older. And I think when I was younger, I didn't really understand. And I think all the adults around me thought just not talking about it made it better because nobody knew what to say.
Right.
How do you talk to a child about their parent and what issues there are that are very adult, and make that understandable? And so there's parts of me that's like, I wish I could go back and say, I wish I would have just said, this, this, and this. That would have helped me. But I get, as a parent also myself, how difficult some of those conversations are. And I say all that basically because I think, number one, I think my dad stayed away because he didn't want me to see him in the state he was in a lot. And I think that he was trying to protect me somehow from that and from that world that he was in at the moment, because he wasn't in the best of shape for many of my childhood years. And so when I would see him once in a year, twice in a year at a show with Mom or something, I just remember being so excited to get to spend time with him and wanting to be able to have more of that. And I found out many years later, like my Meemaw told me, that I had a room at my Meemaw's because whenever Mom was off, I'd stay with my Meemaw and Peepaw. They'd take care of me. And then I'd go back to Mom's house when she'd come home. So I had a room there. And so my dad would come over when I was at school, and she said a lot of times he would just lay on my bed holding my stuff, my picture and my stuffed animals, and just cry and just miss me. And I'm like, I know you can't tell that to like a 6-year-old. But he's just like, I wish at 10 maybe or 12, I wish I had known that my dad wanted to be with me and spend time with me. I think everybody was so scared to talk about it. No one wanted to talk about alcoholism. Nobody wanted to talk about the lifestyle and the things that were happening around him. And the one thing I'm the most grateful for from my mom was that she never, ever, not one time trashed my dad to me. Never. My dad never trashed my mom to me.
That's awesome.
Never. And I've seen so many people do that, and so many people that as adults we know they have reasons they could have, and but it means everything.
That's
to a
the one
child.
thing in divorce that I am such an advocate about, because I've been there twice.
Yeah.
And I had a child only once in it, and I would tell anybody today, and I have, like, look, you guys are grown.
Yeah.
Work your crap out. Whichever way. If you're going to work it out, work it out. If you're going to work it in. But leave that innocent child out
That's
of it.
right. They didn't ask to be born. They didn't ask for your problems.
Why drag them in the middle of it, And don't use that child to gain,
Yeah, some kind of favor, and or like something over their head.
I see that so much.
Yeah, it's terrible. And
I'm like, you know what? You're going to pay for that one.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to pay for that one.
Yeah, and we all do eventually. The things that we do here, we certainly do. But like my mom, like if I ever saw anything on TV, or I remember being at a friend's house at 12 and reading something in the paper, and coming home all upset about it. And Mom would be like, honey, she said, first of all, let me just say this. She said, the only thing you need to know is that your dad loves you. And even though he may have some issues on his own, that doesn't matter. He loves you. You love him. That's
End of
all.
story.
End
Yeah.
of it.
Good.
She said, so don't read the stories. When you see him, just resist the urge. She said, when something's on TV, change the channel, cut it off, walk out of the room, whatever you need to do. But honey, people are going to say things because of who your dad is. And whether it's true or it's not true, a lot of it gets embellished, and they do it for a reason.
Yeah.
They want ratings and money, so you don't need to be concerned about any of that.
And they still do it.
Yeah.
They still do it.
And meanwhile, children all over the place are
suffering
and miserable. And people play off that. I mean, I read comments all the time on social media, and they make assumptions that people who are either related to or are the artists themselves. Because they're famous, that gives everybody the right to invade any kind of privacy, to make assumptions and talk about them, and to say things that are just horrible that family members read. I can tell you right now, family members read things online, and I've gotten harder about it so that I can not worry about it.
Yeah, but your mom prepared you when you were young
Yeah.
for now, because now you can look at it and go, yeah, right, whatever. I know different,
Right.
and it just rolls off you like water off of
Yeah.
a duck.
I have rare moments. I mean, they used to not be so rare. 20 years ago, if somebody said something about mom or dad, I probably would have,
Yeah.
jumped right on them. And I don't feel a need to defend them like I used to, because you don't have to defend nonsense.
Exactly.
You don't have to defend
Yeah.
ignorance. You don't have to defend any of those things. So I know the truth. God knows the truth. My parents knew the truth. I'm good with that.
And Jerry would always say, is one thing I always remember, is the truth is like the sun and the moon. It'll come up and it'll come out.
That's right. It absolutely does.
And
Yeah. Whether you want it to or not.
Yeah. So what about birthdays? Did they try to? I mean, I know during that period of time, probably not. But did they always try to make things special for you? They try to go out of the way to make it, special. Pull off the road. Oh no, I've got to go. I can't be on the road this weekend. It's Georgette's birthday. Or
Definitely, they both did special things for me. And I will say, as far as a holiday goes, this one particular Thanksgiving stands out only because this goes back to the food thing with Mom. I was just gotten married, and as we do, we got to take turns now. You're married; you can't always go to your family for every holiday.
Exactly.
And so that's what you do for each other, is you share in that. And because we were living in Alabama and Mom was about a 5-hour drive away, you couldn't really see both sides of the family all in one day. It wasn't like when you've got relatives that all live in the same town.
Yeah.
So we'd have to take turns. And this was going to be my very first holiday ever in my 20s not being at my mom's house for Thanksgiving. And already, Mom traveled so much, I didn't get to see her that often anyway. So I remember thinking, shut up and be nice. Don't be a jerk because you're missing your mom. But, you know what I mean? Be in the moment and enjoy your Thanksgiving. But I knew I was just going to miss it, Mom, so bad. Well, about 2 days before Thanksgiving, and I'm anticipating this holiday I've already decided I'm going to hate, because I'm not going to be at Mom's house. But I'm trying to be nice because, And so I got this knock on the door from the post guy, and he's like, I have a really big package. I just want to make sure someone's home before I started lugging it out of the car. And I'm thinking, what is he delivering? It was the size of like a trunk, like a foot trunk. Like it was big, huge, and it was styrofoam. And he came, and I had to sign for it. And I remember popping it open and thinking, what in the world? And Mom had put a little letter on the top of it. I picked it up and I read it. I wish I don't even know where that letter ended up. I hate that. It just makes me sick. But I wish I still had that. But Mom knew that I was going to be missing her, and knew that I was going to be missing our family holiday. So what did she do? 2 days before Thanksgiving, she had spent all day, very obviously all day, making everything she could think of, from breakfast to dinner. I mean, I had frozen biscuits. I had everything from breakfast to what we'd probably eat at lunch, to all of our turkey and dressing and pies and cakes and banana, everything. She had made it all. What needed to be cooked, she had instructions written on the top. Just pop it in the oven at 350 for blah, or do this. We ate off of that thing for probably months, because we'd eat bits and pieces at a time.
That's surprising.
And I hated to eat the last little bit of it. And my husband hated it too, because he was like, oh, your mom's such a good cook. And I'm like, I know, and I'm not going to take from that you think I'm not. So I'm gonna be happy that we have Mom's food.
I remember walking into her kitchen sometimes, and I would see things, just like a pie one time, and it was that. The reason it sticks out in my memory, wasn't the clear cellophane, it was that green kind of color.
Oh yeah.
And if you wrapped it a couple of times, you couldn't see it.
Yeah.
But that last wrap, she had a little card in there, and it was all the instructions on how to make that certain thing, if you like it, or this, that, and other, whatever. And she make these for people.
Yeah.
And I was like, aren't you just
Yep.
It was amazing. I was like, golly, I'd be big as a bear if I lived even a mile close to here.
Yeah. Well, and Mom made that holiday so awesome, because even though I still wasn't with her, there was a piece of Mom in my house. You know what I mean? There was stuff that Mom labored over just for us. And
that is
awesome.
Worth more to me than anything.
Yeah.
That is love.
Yeah.
From the heart, from the labor. You
That's
know,
right.
it's
That
better
was
than
better
going
than the
and
fancy table setting and all the people
I'm just
coming
gonna
over.
send her a
and,
car
yeah.
for Christmas. You know, here's go get her, give her that car. You know,
Yes.
that don't mean nothing. You know,
No.
but that, yeah,
Personally made, and Mom was
because
so,
here we
that was
are,
her
20 years,
forte.
30 years later,
Yeah.
talking about it. You know,
Yes.
yeah, I can guarantee you wouldn't be talking about a car.
Nope.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, even though that's my children's father who I'm talking about, and we haven't been together since my children were 4. They're gonna be 32. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they still living in Florida.
Well, no, they're in Alabama. One of them
okay.
actually is in Oklahoma City because he's at Tinker Air Force Base.
Okay.
But he's going to be coming to, I guess, Maxwell Air Force Base, hopefully, by
All
the end
right.
of the year.
Be
So
a little bit closer.
yeah, I'll be very happy about that because Oklahoma City's way too far away.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like they mentioned it's probably 3 or 4 years ago we were having a conversation, and I guess they had been at their dad's house earlier, and something came up about, I don't know, particular kind of food or things, something. And he mentioned that and was talking about, oh man, that was so good. And that was like, her mom was such a good cook and blah. And they had a big talk about my mom. And so my ex-husband had wonderful, endearing conversations with my children, even with me not there, many years separated, to remember that. So it made a big impression.
And you're
on him.
you're worried about them being forgotten.
I
told you,
know,
it ain't gonna
right?
happen.
So
It ain't gonna happen.
Awesome.
You got your generations and their generations, and they'll keep telling
Yeah.
them stories. People always tell me, if somebody, they think they're immortal. I said, there's things that can make you immortal, but it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of kindness, and it takes a ton of love.
yeah,
And if you teach that person, okay, here's what you do to be a good person. I was always told, to have a good neighbor, you got to be a good neighbor. And that makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah.
You can't, not be a good
like
neighbor
those
and have
treat others like you want them to treat you.
So if you go
works.
over and above to be a kind person, not for anything in return,
Right.
but it's leaving those stories. It's leaving those things. And everybody's, that song right there, people are always going to remember that song right there that you did. Well, I hope not.
Yeah.
I hope they're going to remember me through the kindness of my son, how he was raised and what he turned out to be. And I think with saying that, and I didn't lead up to that, it just popped into my mind.
Yeah.
You were an absolute beautiful advocate of your mother and your father, just the goodness of both of them.
Thank you.
And I think that, you were literally the only that they had together. So, everybody's like, oh, Georgette, she's royalty.
That always cracks me up.
And I'll go like, she ain't royalty, I know her.
Yeah. Yeah, no crowns in my closet, I'm just saying.
She went to the bathroom at my house one time. She ain't royalty.
I know, I had to buy smell good stuff for you, friends.
She was spraying that poof. But it's just the kindness and the goodness that they instilled in the sweetness of your mom. I mean, there she was. People would just ooh and ah and Google and gaw over her and your dad. But, hey, Jim, want a sandwich? I made it already for you. Well, how are you going to say no if she's made it already?
And how does it, this is what used to always get me with Mom. She did that all the time anyway, and she'd do it for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But, there were times, and because you saw her, I'm sure, plenty of times this way, where she'd be having health issues and she wouldn't be able to eat. She might not be able to eat for a few days or for a week or so. And I remember being at the house and getting up one morning, and there's Mom in the kitchen in her gown. She's making homemade biscuits and sausage gravy and, potatoes and all the good stuff. And I'm like, Mom, you don't have to get up early trying to make breakfast. And she's like, no, I know that you were going to get up, by so-and-so time because you had to do whatever. And I'm sitting here thinking, the woman hasn't eaten in 4 days and probably can't eat for a few more. And she's making food for me, smelling it, looking at it. She's got to be hungry, and never complained, never acted like that was a thing at all. She just got so much joy out of doing things for people. And, I hope that, we can all be that way at some point, that we just love giving and helping people so much that it just becomes an ordinary thing that we do and that we don't think much of.
I had a great uncle that passed away about 3 or 4 years ago, and he was 96. And my wife and I would go and see him periodically. And we both had been married before. He met my wife, and he would talk to us like we were teenagers. And to him, we were, He was 90 and we were
Yeah.
in our 50s.
Y'all were kids.
And y'all young'uns, y'all enjoy each other. And but he said, "Can I give y'all some advice?" And it stuck with me. I mean, me and my wife were just talking about it the other day. He said, outlove one another. Don't go. He said, I ain't talking about going and buying stuff. Anybody can do that. He said, just outdo one another, do for one another.
Yeah.
If you see something, oh, she would love that. Let's go. I'm gonna take her there tomorrow. Let's do that together.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's just go take a ride down the road on Sunday afternoon. Stuff
Yep.
like that. And he said, those are the things that it's the little things that women always talk about.
Yeah.
And he said, but it works just as much with men.
Yeah. I
He
mean,
said, it's
Mother's
the
Day
little
and
things.
Father's Day are coming up. What's the biggest thing that you could do for your mom or dad, assuming you're blessed enough to still have a mom or dad around?
Time.
They're the easy. Yeah. It's the easiest thing in the world. It costs no money.
Time.
You don't have to buy a car. You don't have to buy presents and flowers and all that. My kids, I tell them all the time because, I feel like the world's so crazy and fast paced, and they were both in school. Like one just graduated, one's about to graduate. So I know, money's tight too. And so I remember telling them, look, I don't care if you send me a card. I don't care if you get me a present. Please don't worry about those things. And they do anyway, but you know what I mean? I'm like, you don't worry about that. If you call me and I know that you have remembered me,
That's all that matters.
have a 30-minute conversation with me. That's going to make my day, my week. That's going to be awesome.
I am fortunate enough to have both. My dad's in not really good shape right now, but my mom and we've always been close, and we talk 3-4 times a week.
That's awesome.
And it's mostly about silly stuff that either I did or stories of stuff that she did when we were younger. I mean, my mom was a baby when I was born. She was 18.
Yeah.
And we laugh about all of that kind of stuff, and talk about how young she was and how Dad was robbing the cradle. He was 8 years older than my mom,
Yeah.
and they actually got married and kept it a secret for almost a year and a half.
That's
And then when my grandmother
hilarious.
found out about it, my dad was scared to death. He said, he thought that one was going to get me in my sleep. He,
Oh, my
he was
goodness.
scared to death. And finally, I think my mom said one of the biggest things that really upset my grandmother was the fact that she didn't get to see her walk down the aisle because they snuck off and, drove to Kentucky, Horse Cave, Kentucky, or somewhere
Oh, my
like that,
goodness,
because you
yeah.
could get married. Drove up there one weekend and got married and rushed right back. Because they had to be back before midnight.
Right. You got curfew.
Yeah, and with those, just hearing those stories and holding on to those things. My dad, bless his heart, he has dementia, and my dad will give you, if you can bring up one subject, he'll give you 4 or 5 good stories on it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't understand it the first time, you will by the 4th or 5th time, because he'll tell you right over again, just exact. And I told my wife one day, she said, Lord, that's got to be rough not remembering. I said, you know what? I wish I had dementia a few times. He could only remember the good things.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wish I think that's one of the things that it's such a horrible disease, but I think that's one of the things that is a blessing from God, is that, you don't remember a lot of bad.
Right.
You only remember the fun times, because he's laughing and he's telling the stories over and over again.
Yeah.
And then
Those are the memories that stuck to him. I suppose
Exactly.
maybe if he'd had a lot more trauma or some horrible things that happened, maybe he would have fallen into feeling remembering those things too much.
Things that I know that bothered him 10 years ago, where he'd gotten arguments with people and this, that, and other, and somebody will bring their name up. Oh yeah, I remember when they was so and so.
Oh, that's awful.
And just go to laughing and giggling. And I'm thinking, 10 years ago, you didn't even want your breath mentioned then. That I was like, man, this disease may not be so bad after all.
Well,
But it is. It's horrible.
One of the most amazing songs ever written by Glenn Campbell, "I'm Not Gonna Miss You."
Yes.
That just is heartbreaking
It
every
is.
time I hear it. And I guess more so not just because the lyrics are so truthful and painful anyway, but I guess knowing that he wrote that as he was
as he was
getting
going
sick
through
and
it.
knowing that this would be a reality for him. It's just heart wrenching. But
I
it's,
have tried so hard to reach out to his daughter. We have. She's such a talented individual. I mean, and she is the chip off the old block to Dad.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the girl can play the banjo. She can play the guitar. She can play the fiddle. She can play
Ashley,
the drums.
right? Is that her?
Yes.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
I think he has an older daughter, Debbie.
Now this is she's played on the Opry with him, and
Okay.
she's the one that kind of stayed close. She did a lot of things with him there towards the end.
Awesome.
And she said the hardest thing was to hear things come out of her dad's mouth that she knew that wasn't.
Oh yeah.
That's not my dad, but these things are coming out of his mouth,
Yeah.
and you just have to keep remembering that's not him. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
Our brain is, it's just imagine your, computer, your PC, if the hard drive got so corrupt that it started spitting out weird things unusually, that's obviously, kind of like how our brain does. I mean, sometimes when they are afflicted with these things, it doesn't work in the way ours works. And
Yeah.
so, because my Meemaw did that. I never heard my Meemaw say a cuss word in my whole life. And when she started getting really bad dementia, she'd be liable to turn around and say something to you and cuss somebody out. And we were just, Meemaw, like, what? Like
Yeah.
this, I never heard her say, like, darn. Like, that
Yeah.
was, it just, not who she was. So, like, I get that. You just have to try to remember this is someone who is not able to use their body the way that they would want to.
So, all the things that you've heard over the years, and you really don't know if it's true, but it's a really cool story. It doesn't have to be about your mom or your dad. It could be just about anything, any story you've heard throughout the industry that you've kind of heard it more than once, because I've heard a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, I heard that story, but I don't know how legit it is.
I know. I've heard so many, and I'm trying to. I was thinking about this today on my way here, and I think the majority of the things that I've heard, I was kind of like, I don't know, because I've heard that either so much that I either believe it's true, someone told me it was. I don't know if I have one that's
fine.
really not so sure. But like, maybe I could just tell a story that I didn't witness, but it is true.
Yeah, there you go.
And Dad talked about it.
There you
but
go.
like, it's one of my favorite stories just because I think it's hilarious, and I think it certainly shows my dad's personality, especially back in those days. But do you know the Buck Owens story?
No.
You don't know the Buck Owens story? Good. Okay, so this is a funny one. So apparently, as the story goes, my dad and Buck were touring together back when my dad was just starting out. He was really only having like he had maybe one hit out. Like he really hadn't done a lot yet. Brand new. Buck was very established. He was a big star. He was doing great things. And so they had Dad opening for Buck on the road. And Dad, when touring with him, they'd had several dates before, and Buck always closed, obviously, because he was the bigger star. But apparently my dad, I guess, must have been having a little more fun wherever it was he was than maybe he ought to have. And so he tried to call Buck ahead at the hotel at the next place and say, would you mind just this one time if I close the show? Because I think he wanted to stay where he was a little bit longer. He was having too much fun. And I don't think he wanted to leave just quite yet. So he was asking Buck if maybe just this one night, he'd let him close the show. And Dad never did say, like, what it was that Buck said. But as it goes, apparently Buck didn't like that.
Imagine that.
And he wanted to point out some things. We'll just leave it at that. And, Dad was in that frame of mind back then that he didn't want to be talked to that way. He thought that was really mean and nasty of Buck. So he went ahead and he came and he got to the show and he was ready to open and he went out to go do his show. And I guess in spite, just to kind of be mean to Buck because he was mad at what he did, he didn't sing a single one of his own songs. He sang all of Buck's. Sang every single Buck song that he knew. And then Buck had to go on afterwards and sing his songs again after Dad already sang
That's
all
great.
his songs.
That's great.
So, I used to tell that story occasionally in my shows because I would do a Buck Owens song that I really liked a lot. And so I would be like, so I'm sorry, Buck. We're going to do this one for you tonight. But yeah, I just always thought that was hilarious. I know it's terrible, but it's hilarious.
Did the tour end right then?
No. Unfortunately, they still had more dates to go.
Wow.
So, but I've had a lot of people ask me if that was true. And of course, I've had a lot of people ask me about a lot of stories, whether or not they were true. But that just happens to be one of my favorites because I think there was a time in my life where I would have related to that a little bit more, only because, we change so much. In your 20s, you're different than your 30s, than your 40s. I hope, anyway. Hopefully, we're all learning and changing at least a little bit in some good way. But yeah, there was a time in my life where I was a lot like my dad in the sense that he at times would cut his nose off to spite his face simply because he wanted to prove he could if he wanted to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Proof is always in the pudding.
That's it. Even if the pudding
I would
was
look
bad.
at people sometimes. I'd look at people sometimes and I go, you know what? I resemble that remark.
Yes, absolutely.
So, well, it was a blessing and a wonderful time here with you today.
Well, thank you. I'm glad
And
you
I'm so
invited
glad
me. It was good to see you again.
Catch you coming through town.
Yes, me too. Thank you for having me.
And we look forward to hearing more from you. And if you want to let everybody know where you might be playing close next, or how to go look at it, or website, or all that good stuff, do so.
GeorgetteJones.net. And we have all kind of cool things on there for you to look at. And if you are interested, please go look there. I'd love to see you somewhere down the road. We do tell a lot of stories. We share a lot of things. And I always go out after and meet every single person. Because just like Mom always said to me, I wouldn't get to do what I love and do what I do for Mom and Dad if it weren't for all the people who come out and actually go see shows. So I'm very thankful for all those people who still love traditional music.
I'm going to leave here and go get me a turkey cheese sandwich somewhere.
With mustard.
With mustard. Don't you forget. White bread.
Jim.
Thank you.
It.